presentation, but I just have a concern that would want to get his mind on. You have touched on the aspect of Taliban being recognized as a government, so to speak. But I'm just having a concern that don't you think that would amount to or would create a situation where we have armed and organized, terror groups, emerging in every other part of the world, and toppling democratically installed governments. And if that were to happen, then they would have some form of a precedent that if Taliban did this and they were recognized as a government, then what would make it hard or any different from any other entity or organization out there, like the Lord Resistance Army of Uganda and all these other terror organizations that are doing activities in the Republic of Congo.
Thank you so much, Council. So we'll hear from Robert. It's now 8:57 or 58, so we'll extend by 5 minutes until 9:05. So yes, Robert, the floor is yours. You can now answer, and then after you're done now, I'll just wrap up and summarize. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Asumba. So as I said, strictly speaking, the Taliban already have a structure in place that they have been running for the last 20 years, and they have some form of government. And I related that to the ICJ advisory opinion on the Western Sahara advisory opinion, where the court held that any particular form of government is not set down particular form of government. So any person who decides, when they satisfy the constituting elements of the Montevideo Convention, then they in textbook, they can be taken in as a government. But then what I said is the international space is more political than it is legal, because now, just as you've said, if we were to agree that the Taliban, they've satisfied these constituting elements, then are we really saying, are we giving leeway for hostile takeover of states by other parties and then giving them the capacity of being a government? That the effect that would have is one that would cut both ways, because at one point we are saying that our people have their right to self-determination. So our people would come in and say that they form a group and say we are tired of Kenya, so CCR, Mombasa Republican Party, and we want out. But then again, the implication that has is that either you're going to war or either the state is going to say that, okay, you guys just go and do your thing. But in most cases, that's not what happens. And there's an exception to the rule of a people's right to self-determination. And it's I forget the provision, but it's in the additional protocol 2 to the Geneva Conventions of 1949, and it calls that it's either 33 or 39(1), where it provides that a state can do anything that it considers, it can do anything to try and protect the territory and the unity of its people. And by that, we mean that it can quash and it can go into war with whatever the people. And for us, there is the old adage that goes that one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And in as much as we say the Taliban are terrorists, to some people, they are their freedom fighters. So we cannot really just say that they do not deserve to be a government. Yes, there's the implication of we will somehow be giving leeway to terrorism and certain factions into getting into government and taking over and toppling governments. And it is legal. And yes, as I said, from my personal perspective, I wouldn't say that we should agree, or I wouldn't side with taking the Taliban as a government, in as much as it satisfies the provisions of the convention, because they still break international norms and human rights. So at that, from that perspective, then, in as much as they satisfy the constituting elements, then they do not, in my opinion, have the leeway to be a government and to run a state. And I think that's my opinion. I think going into
2 minutes, then I take.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So I will quickly go through the issues that Angela raised. So there's, recognition cannot be reversed. That's true. Once you get into a contract, probably, or an agreement, or you sign any treaty with a government, then at that point you recognize that as a state, as a government, and you cannot go back. You cannot say, we messed up, let's go back, fix this. No, it won't happen. So yeah, and that's why many states are they're waiting on the big dogs to say what's going to happen. And until the big states decide that this is the way forward, then Atonona Kenya is not in this issue. They'll probably just be called for some UNJ meeting. Then Mashati will just get into a plane and go somewhere and have tea and then say, yeah, Afghanistan is not a state as is right now. Probably even doesn't know what's happening. But that's the state in the international space. So the issue of China not recognizing Taiwan, I think I dealt with that in the issue of Turkey and Cyprus. It's almost similar, and the recognition is simply declaratory. Yes, it's simply declaratory. It's not binding, and there's a difference between having a government, having international relations, and being able to make contracts or make agreements or have the capacity to enter into relations with international subjects. Get into whatever's with the UN, with other states, with MNOs. It's different. So it's the fact that we recognize you as a state, it doesn't change a lot. Then it's more of a political factor than it is a legal factor. And government versus state, and this it's a classic Afghanistan example. In 1997, the United Nations General Assembly decides that Afghanistan is a failing state. It's actually a failed state. It doesn't have a government. It doesn't have nothing. Everything is bad. Things are terrible. So the US decides to get into this space, and they decide to sponsor Afghanistan. And now they've spent $1 trillion, and Biden says that, you guys, we've been fighting for you. There's no way for the last 20 years we can have people absconding or people running away from your army and just vanishing and laying down arms without putting up a fight. I mean, we cannot be doing this. And that's where it comes to the state versus the government. The state of Afghanistan is recognized, but the government wasn't recognized in 1997. In as much as there was a government, it was not effective. And it's the same thing. I see the same future for the Taliban state. Yes, Afghanistan is going to be recognized, and the same has gone for Somalia. Somalia is a failed state, but it has not been decommissioned as a state. It has not yet hijapotea. It's still somehow in reserve until that day when probably AMISOM or some other army decides that, we are going to build these guys, Somali, down from the ground up. And until then, same goes for Afghanistan. They probably will just somehow give them non-voter status, just like Palestine or something like that. But I don't see a future where Afghanistan will just be thrown out. Probably, I think I will just leave it at that. We are at 21:06, and thank you for your attention, and thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you very much, Council. You have done well. You have presented. I felt like I was attending a public international law lecture. So, oh, I forgot to mention that he was once the president of the International Court of Justice and Kenya Model United Nations. So we bring the best. So he's one of the best. So we are happy and honored to have you. Also, I want to thank the 10. We were actually, I think, around 14 or 13, but so far we are 10. I'll mention you. I can see Sam, I can see Alan, Cheriot, I can see Olang, Collins. Okay, the rest where I can't see you. I think Elaine was also here. Sorry if I've not mentioned your name in the interest of time. So I can see all of you. Asanteni, I hope you have learned something. So when you go out there, at least you have something to say concerning the Taliban issue and the US issue. So you're well versed and we have learned. So it will go on YouTube, I think this coming week. And yeah, I'm so grateful and honored to have all of you. So as always, we'll meet next Saturday. Next Saturday, we'll have Jean Cloud talking about T-state and intestate succession. It will be an interesting topic and time to listen to people talk about the succession. We have seen Chris Kirubi passing on. So how will his estate, if he had a will or if he didn't have a will? So those are the things we will be looking at next week. But thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Asanteni sana. You are free to leave. Thank you. Good night. Let me stop.